Hey there, you're tuning in to LowKey by Oaky, our easygoing sessions for hotel professionals where we chat about industry trends, issues, and solutions.
Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are listening from. Welcome to another really exciting episode of LowKey by Oaky. Today we have an awesome guest with us today. Every time that I've interacted with you has been so nice, so down to earth and really, really friendly. But also we've had some really, really interesting conversations about technology and basically how hotel chains can adopt technology, and sometimes so technical that I don't know in or out anymore. But I've really enjoyed our interactions. I was thinking when I was on the bike this morning, if I had to ask ChatGPT, give me a CV with so that I can land any director of technology job in the luxury hotel chain space, then I think your CV would be something that ChatGPT would produce.
Thank you.
We are so happy to have you with us. Of course, our guest today is Modi Chami, has been with a range of luxury hotel chains, Le Méridien, IHG, it's almost 10 years or something with Four Seasons. So if you've all stayed in luxury hotels as of late, chances are big that you've had an experience where Modi has had a key role in. Modi, warm welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We're super happy to have you here. Hey, Modi, I wanted to ask and start off a bit broad. In your view, how would you define hospitality?
It's service. It's something that should actually make you feel at home where you're not at home.
Mm-hmm.
It's an experience. You know, it's not just a bed. And it's the people who actually serve you.
Yeah.
And the tools that they have to make their job easy as well.
And being a tech guy, what is the role of
that's my lens of tech, like, right? So providing them with a tool,
yeah, exactly,
that makes that an awesome experience. Yeah.
And what is the role of technology, like, other than providing the tool? What does that mean? What is the role of technology in aiding hospitality?
It's many things, and it has different lenses to it, right? So it's no more like ringing a bell and somebody just to kind of come out and help find an available room for you, and all of that. Like, it's we're living in a time today where the population or generations are very digital savvy, and they would expect that they have at least like a way to book their accommodation online and whatever not, like, and that's where technology comes in, right? And obviously with that you need to have all the back-end systems that supports that makes kind of the staff job easy, but also from a customer perspective that they can get what they want.
Yeah. But so today we are going to have a very interesting conversation. I'm so excited about this, to talk about what are like the most basic systems that hotels need? How can you stitch them together to harness the maximum potential? How can you build a business case, maybe to the CEO? Why should you buy technology in a hotel chain? And lastly, what is the value that maybe you can expect? So I didn't mention it in the beginning, but you've been, is it director of technology, a nice summary of like your job title over the past?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can say that. My career with Four Seasons evolved essentially to focus more on not just kind of the customer experience from a digital perspective, but also opening up the channels, the distribution, data, personalization, and CRM, essentially, right? So in essence, like, how do we get to know the customer better, and how do we use technology to provide an exceptional experience that matches actually the luxury service that we provide at properties.
Yeah.
So that was kind of very exciting role that I had with Four Seasons, and obviously we've done amazing things, and Four Seasons continue to evolve in that space as well. Not only from a customer experience perspective, but also from a staff experience. Like, how do we empower the staff to provide that service, be enabled with technology versus kind of being a burden on them?
Yeah.
So that's sort of kind of where my role evolved, and I spent a decade almost there.
Yeah.
And then I went on my own,
Yeah.
and now, I feel like I've gained enough experience to kind of go out to the world and sort of provide my own perspective on how we can make this better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're sitting on information that is a playbook for many hotel chains, right? And Four Seasons being Four Seasons, you have very high expectations if you're a guest staying at the Four Seasons. So enabling them to deliver and exceed guest expectations is not easy. I'm sure of that. But when you then think about if that's the end goal that you want to get to, what should a hotel start with? Or hotel chain? What are like the most basic systems that the hotel needs, you think?
Yeah, obviously you always kind of start with the PMS, right?
Sure.
Like the property management system, where you hold all your inventory, your room types, and what you like the product itself that you're selling at the property, which is for the most part a room, right? But then, like, you'll have to think of all the ancillary services as well, like how you provide them, from an F&B or a dining perspective. Other services like spa, if you are, if you have spa services at the property, and so on and so forth. So, PMS obviously is kind of the main vein, how I call it, or the heart of a hotel system. But the expectations of a PMS, changed from what it traditionally was, right? Like, initially, or if you think of it, 10, 15 years ago, like you bring in, I just need a PMS that shows me the availability, that I can actually book a room, and so on and so forth. And, has some sort of, integrations with the systems that are on property, like the PBX to display the name, or, the interactive TV integration to welcome Mr. Chami or whatever, but, like since like, I think 5 or 7 years ago, like that expectation of the PMS are becoming higher and higher, right? So it needs to be connected to other systems. It needs to connect also to the customer experience, and so on and so forth. So although it's kind of the main heart of the property, but it also, needs to have other features, like being in the cloud, for instance. From a brand level perspective, the PMS cannot operate, on its own, or in silo, if you will. It needs to have connectivity to central systems.
Yeah.
That's very important from a hotel chain, like, how inventory is synced up to a central place where, as a brand, you can offer booking at, multiple locations, where if you are looking online for availability, and if you don't find in one hotel, that suggestions could be made for other properties, and so on and so forth. And all of that, like, needs to be integrated really well.
And if you wanna reach that level of help towards the staff, like maybe you did at Four Seasons or any other luxury hotel chain, how should you stitch these systems together in order to really enable? We talked on the phone about a single view of the customer, for example.
Right.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, traditionally, hospitality systems, or hotel systems, more specific, they integrate like on point-to-point type interface, right? And that does not work anymore. Like, you need to know, and unfortunately, like within the hospitality sector, there's no one single system that does everything for you, right? So, you'll need a PMS system, you need a spa system, you need a POS system, you need a dining reservation system, like table management, and so on and so forth, right? Like, you have the interactive TV, you have like the PBX. All of those are, independent systems that should not be integrated point to point anymore. Like, you need.
What does it mean
back.
that they're point to point integrated?
Like, the PMS integrates with, the POS system. The POS system, on the other hand, integrates
like
with,
in a line, if you visualize
in a line, if you
Okay.
will, or like think of it as a mash, right? Like, point A is talking to B, but A is also talking to C.
Yeah.
C is talking to B, but then it's also talking to D. Like that's sort of the point to point. Whereas like it needs to move more towards sort of a service bus, if you will, right? Like the concept of like orchestrating all kinds of integrations across multiple systems, defining what is your source of truth for what type of information.
Yeah.
So we talked about the single view of the customer. Obviously the PMS is not the right system to host sort of the single or the source of truth of a profile, because the profile could be generated from many places.
Yeah.
You need to maintain that sort of integrity of that profile identity across multiple systems. In this case, like, you have to think of like, okay, what do I need? Where do I want to host that single record of truth from a profile perspective, right?
And that could be in a data lake, or that could be in a CRM or in a CDP.
CRM, CDP,
Yeah.
obviously, like are natural places where they would host such a profile.
Do you think it's the job of the PMS to eventually also host that type of data?
I don't think so. No.
Why not?
Because the PMS is actually built to manage kind of the operation of a property versus kind of trying to handle the customer profile itself.
Okay.
And if you think of it, also the PMS is not capable of doing, other types of, or at least kind of these days, I don't know if that would change in the future, but for the most part, it handles kind of, the rooms product,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if you think of it, like, many hotels or hospitality brands, like they're moving towards sort of like, hey, like we have a whole package to offer you besides just the room, right? So that's why I don't think PMS would be the place for that. But even when you think of a CRM or CDP, like there are main capabilities that they need to have in order to host that single view of the customer, right? So, for the most part is around the match and merge capability. Like if I am receiving Eric's profile or an Eric profile, if you will, from multiple systems, I need to have the proper algorithm in place to try to stitch those profiles across those multiple systems.
And make sure there are no copies.
Exactly. So, so that, I mean, like that is one of the major functions that needs to exist in such a CRM or a CDP, if you will. The other thing is like also integrations, capability of, broadcasting back to those systems who have subscribed to this profile to say, well, I have two Erics and I want to, those two, they need to be one.
Yeah.
So those receiving systems on the other end need to accept this type of, function, if you will, or integration so that they can execute. So they will always kind of refer back to the center when it comes to, I know that this is the same Eric, right? So it's that's where it starts. And essentially it trickles back down and it goes down the route of like, okay, how much data do I have on Eric? Whether that's kind of from a transactional level perspective, like around rooms bookings, or from an F&B perspective, or spa treatments, or any other type of activities that you would have kind of done at the property. And the ability to collect preferences, whether those are observed or stated by the guest, or behavioral, if you will, around, transactions that have been made. So all those are tags that are important to kind of include in that single view of the customer.
And what have you seen? What are you able to achieve when you have such a single view of the customer?
Many things. First and foremost, like, now I know a lot about Eric that actually could help me, first and foremost, to make that experience for you for when you arrive, like, to be better prepped. That's kind of the first thing that could help brands. The other thing is like, and again, if you think of it, like there's an operational aspect of it, from a recognition standpoint, knowing and expecting, anticipating the guest needs. Second is from a marketing perspective, like, I know enough about you so I can actually be more relevant when I am communicating with you.
Yeah.
And third is essentially, as I am collecting this data, where it feeds back to sort of like revenue management systems, or like, an upsell type function, or logic, if you will, then you're actually, making decisions based on facts, right? So like there are a lot of, benefits of, having that single view with those data elements. But again, like, a lot of work has to happen to get to that point where you actually are collecting those data, accurately in a way that it makes sense as well. So
it's so interesting. When we do upselling today, we typically like optimize for like cohorts of guests, or small niche segments, but still segments. It's never based on Modi as a person.
Right.
So, and still our conversion rates, like depending on the hotel, maybe on average is around 11%. There are hotels that do 20, but on average around 11. And I think in the future, in not so many years from now, we can probably at least double that conversion rate. And partly will be having more relevant data, so that you can say, "Hey Modi, last time you stayed with us, you had a junior suite with a sea view. Would you like the same room or whatever?"
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
that's super exciting. But and for, I would imagine, and from the hotel chains that we work with, very few have this single view of the customer. Like if you look at the whole world of hotels that we have today, how complicated is this to implement if you already have like a chain? Because I imagine it would be very different if you have a brand new chain and you can set up everything from scratch. It's probably an easier route to go than if you have a lot of things in place.
Yeah, I think the first thing is like it's the mindset.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So like, just understanding the benefit of implementing such a project, sets your mind that you actually want to do this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the first thing, right? Like, okay, are we willing to invest? And, understanding all those benefits that we can get from such a project, is the first thing. Then, it's mobilization, right? And it's not just kind of one group or one department at the brand that could do this. So, there's operations, there's marketing, there's finance, there's IT, obviously. So legal, because you have to think like in these days, like those privacy laws, they're becoming more and more complicated, right?
Yeah.
Like whether that's around data residency or what you can share or what you can collect, and so on and so forth, right? So it's an army, right? Like, to get this mobilized and understanding the needs of every stream per se, or every department, like helps you shape up like how you want to go about this and what you need to get there. So yeah, it's a lot of work. It's not easy, but it pays off if you do it.
Yeah, I bet. Have you been part of the team that built a business case towards the upper leadership to say yes to such a project in the past?
Yes.
How did you do that? Like, in short bullet points, what kind of structure should you follow to build such a business case?
Well, in essence, like, we were trying to call out, first, we defined our use cases, right? So we helped kind of shape up the use cases around, okay, why do we want to do this in the first place?
Yeah.
What are the use cases that support, such a project or such an implementation? And then we went about like, if we don't do this, what happens?
Yeah.
What happens to the business growth? What happens to the customer experience? What happens to, retention, and so on and so forth. So, here's what, here are the use cases, what we want to tackle. If we do this, those are the results. And if we don't do anything, we'll continue as is, and those would be the results, right? So that's kind of what was sort of the first one pager that we put together.
Yeah.
But obviously, a lot of work happened in the back end, and that one pager sort of explained, the rationale behind this program, and if it sounds appealing, then we go and we do more details around that.
Yeah. Something I've learned: people are very they're what's it called when you're more worried about what you stand to lose than what you stand to gain.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's called
true.
something. So I can see that appeals to decision makers.
Yeah.
Tell them what they stand to lose if they don't do anything. And what would be maybe your like one tip to, so if you have people listening here who might just open a hotel, or they have something new, where should they start? Should they start with the operations, or do they start with the guest experience in mind?
They come hand in hand. Honestly, you cannot separate those two from each other, right? So
well, what's your North Star then, when you just from the very outset?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always kind of the customer that comes at the top, but behind that, you also have to make sure that the staff that are serving those customers are also happy. Happy employee, happy customer. Like that's how I see it, honestly.
Same here.
But in essence, like those two, they cannot separate from each other, right? So you have to think of like, okay, what is the customer experience that I am aiming for, and how can I execute on this?
Yeah.
So without involving the operations or those people who are going to be in front of the customer, who are going to be responding to any inquiry that comes from a customer, providing them with the right tools, having them see what the customer sees, it won't succeed.
No,
I would say.
Yeah. And honestly, it sounds so exciting. Like I have a very different background. All of a sudden, I decided I'm going to go to hotel school. So I've worked in hotels, and giving someone an amazing experience and service, like that's incredible. I remember working at this 5-star hotel in Scotland called the Gleneagles. Yeah. And everyone was so proud of working there, So I walked around really like strutting around, feeling so excited about the experience that we were giving to these guests. And I'm sure they weren't equipped with half of what we've been talking about today. So super exciting, especially in a time when staff retention is a big issue.
It's really difficult. Yeah, absolutely.
To find and retain talent.
Yeah.
There we go. So that concludes the main session. Thank you so much, Modi, for sharing all this really, really interesting information. Modi, we've come to our second part of the podcast, which is a shameless plug. So you can shamelessly plug anything. Can be anything at all, really. Is there something that you would like to talk about and market to our audience?
Yeah, something shameless. I feel like one of the biggest struggles in hospitality systems is essentially like the integration side of things. I'm currently consulting with one of the brands where essentially, like when you talk to vendors, to partners, oh yeah, we can integrate. Like oh, we have APIs. Oh yeah, like all that kind of cool sort of. Statements that they would make around integrations, but when it comes to execution,
it's not quite as simple.
No, it's not that simple.
Yeah.
And we were expecting you to write against our APIs. Oh no, we were expecting to write against their APIs. Oh, you have to, like there's this sort of kind of mess of integration, and everybody says that they can integrate, but like nonetheless, like there's no standard way of doing that, right? I think it's one of those biggest challenges that we need to solve for in hospitality.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, like, in my line of work, and as I connect to various sort of, service providers within the hospitality tech per se, to help educate and, drive awareness to this type of challenge, because no matter what, like, although we, some vendors may compete for selling the same type of product, but nonetheless, like they have other lines of products that actually could work together with those competitors per se. So we'll need to make it work one way or another. There's no escape from kind of working together in one way or another, right? So we just need to make it work.
Yeah, I think really well said. When we look at innovation at Oaky, it always starts with what type of information can we draw, right? And then what can we do with that? That can be the uniqueness.
Yeah.
But now we look at like how can you look at inventory differently. We have a lot of resorts that we want to work with, and we want to sell their cabanas, or we want to dynamically yield the cabanas at the front row and stuff like that. But so many hotels are just still using Excel sheets.
Exactly.
And then we're thinking, shall we build that inventory system, or should we take that from someone else? It's a very fascinating. It's not an easy thing to solve. We really looked into it. But it's really amazing what you can do once you have that in combination with what we then look at the upsell, the marketing side on the other side of things.
Absolutely.
Hey, I think that concludes. Bling! Modi, thank you so much for coming by. It is such an honor for us to have someone as distinguished and experienced as you have been working with so many of the bigger chains in the world actually live here so close to us in Holland. So thank you for the happenings in your life that made it so that you took your path and your journey to this country and us too, so that we could sit and have a really, really nice conversation in this room today. It's been a plethora of learnings from what are the most basic systems that you need, how do you stitch them together, what is the value you can create when you really are able to optimize and harness the power of these systems, and how can you build a business case to implement them. Modi, it's been a real pleasure having you on board. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks.